One of the most underrated things college football has to offer is when a group of 5 team gets the privilege of hosting a power conference team. You take a bigger brand and force them to go on the road versus a smaller school. It's pretty awesome, and it results in some charged environments and really awesome atmospheres. And so in today's video, we're going to look at 16 such matchups in the 2025 college football season, and we're going to rate them using an arbitrary tier list like we usually like to do around here. We're going to start here by taking a look at some of those arbitrary tier names we've got cooked up, starting with great matchups at the very top. It is regardless of the group of 5 or power conference classification of these teams. It's just going to be a great game that is nationally relevant, most likely, when the time comes for that game to happen. We've got the potential upsets right below there, where I really think the group of 5 school has a legitimate shot at pulling off the upset. Then we've got charged environments where, according to any number of circumstances, it's just going to be a really charged environment that day and a fun atmosphere at that game. After that, we'll get to some group of 5 fun, which is an unusually positive nickname for a tier that's this low on the list. But like I said, I love this genre of game. So even in a case where it might look a little one-sided on paper, it's still going to be a ton of fun. And then finally at the bottom, we've got not really a road game, which will make sense in just a second because there's actually only one game in that tier. But first, I want to tell you guys about the sponsor of today's video, BetterHelp. You know that feeling when you're sitting on your couch on a college football Saturday and the announcer reminds you that the star true freshman wide receiver is only 17 years old that you're watching on the field, and you're sitting there realizing you're older than him, or maybe you're catching up to him in age. In my case, I'm almost 10 years older than some of these guys in some cases, and yet you're sitting there on your couch having not moved for hours. It might make you feel overwhelmed by expectations to make immediate, drastic life changes this year. The realization that you're not a kid anymore or that you're getting older can come with a feeling of being stuck or falling behind in life. BetterHelp is an online service that connects you to a therapist from a network of 30,000 plus licensed professionals with a wide range of specialties and backgrounds. BetterHelp is fully online, making therapy more comfortable and convenient. I know some people are afraid of judgment and afraid of even getting started with therapy, but BetterHelp makes it very easy and convenient to start. Having a good therapist can really change everything. I honestly wish that more young men felt comfortable doing so because I feel like there's a negative stigma around seeing a therapist, especially when you're a guy. A BetterHelp therapist can help you untangle external pressures versus your own internal values. That way you're not holding yourself to somebody else's standards. It can help you develop tools to measure your progress on your own terms and track your growth over time and break down some of those vague feelings you have of being behind into specific addressable concerns, and maybe realizing that Ryan Williams is the top 0.001% of athletes, and maybe a true freshman star wide receiver isn't a realistic goal to set for yourself, and maybe you're being too hard on yourself. Simply fill out the questionnaire and you'll be matched with the therapist within the first couple of days. If you're worried, like I would be, about getting matched with the wrong therapist, there's no need to worry about a Jimbo Fisher level buyout. You can switch at any time for no cost if it's not the right fit or you think things just aren't working out. If therapy's ever something you've considered, I seriously recommend it. Click the link in the description or go to betterhelp.com/CFBudge and get 10% off your first month. Huge thanks to BetterHelp for sponsoring this video. So let's start at the bottom with not really a road game, which is going to have the one game in it, which is Oklahoma at Temple. The reason I say this isn't really a road game is because Temple plays at the Eagles Stadium in Philadelphia at Lincoln Financial Field. So it's not exactly like a home stadium that screams Temple football. And I can almost guarantee Oklahoma will likely beat them by a wide margin, and there will likely be a lot of Oklahoma fans in that stadium, probably more so than there are Temple fans. I think Casey Keeler might give Temple some life next season, but it's not going to be enough life to counteract an Oklahoma team that did a decent job of reloading this offseason. And even if Oklahoma isn't a great team in the SEC next season, they'll pretty much destroy Temple in this game. So the fact that it's not really a home environment and the fact that it'll probably be one-sided lands it in a low tier of its own. But let's move up a notch to the group of 5 fun, where we've got 2 matchups here. West Virginia traveling on the road to play Ohio, and then SMU at Missouri State. They're both on here for kind of different reasons. West Virginia and Ohio will be group of 5 fun, but Ohio isn't known for like having a crazy home field advantage or a crazy charged environment. And there's lots of new faces around West Virginia and Ohio. Ohio having replaced Tim Albin, and then with West Virginia bringing in Rich Rodriguez after firing Neil Brown. So lots of new faces and players. We'll get to know those teams a little bit better better, and I don't know if Ohio's going to have a great shot at pulling off the upset here, which is what makes it fall a little bit lower than some other games. And then there's SMU at Missouri State, where again, I think SMU likely going to be favored by a landslide, but what's novel about that game is the fact that Missouri State is hosting a playoff team from last season, and that's a pretty fun little thing to see happen. Missouri State's early schedule is actually pretty stacked because they have this game. They also have to play a game against USC to open the season. So it's pretty fun to see a program in their first season as an FBS team scheduling games like that. It's pretty cool to see. Moving up a tier, we've got this one a little bit more packed, and that is the charged environments. These are going to be games where you turn on the TV and you're surprised at how charged this group of 5 environment is, how much the fans are into this game, and it'll probably make you gain a little bit of respect for each of these group of 5 programs. We've got North Carolina at Charlotte, which is one of those in-state matchups that's just going to result in a really fun atmosphere, and the fact that North Carolina is going to have Bill Belichick as their head coach. I mean, think if you're a Charlotte 49ers alumni, when you attended the school, they probably weren't even an FBS program. You never dreamed of a Super Bowl winning head coach coming into your building, and yet you got an opportunity to go to that. It's such an awesome atmosphere that's probably going to be there for a program that's not really known for that. And we'll see if Charlotte shows up and turns out in that game. I bet you they will. Northwestern at Tulane isn't necessarily a crazy matchup regionally. However, it's still cool to see Tulane, a program that aspires to be a power conference team, getting a power conference team to come play them in Northwestern. So that one going to be an interesting battle, especially when you consider that Tulane is probably a CFP hopeful and Northwestern is going to need every win they can get to try and get to a bowl game. Utah, I apologize to you fans, going on the road to play Wyoming is another one I get really excited about because Wyoming, their home field environment of Laramie, I think is one of the most underrated in all of college football. And we saw a couple of seasons ago against Texas Tech, them pull off a crazy upset in that one. Weird stuff happens in Laramie. And when they host the Utes, I trust weird stuff could totally happen again. And Utah's a team and a program that needs to get on the right track. So losing an early game to Wyoming would certainly derail things a little bit. We've got another interstate matchup or in-state matchup between Cal and San Diego State. This one is just really fun because it doesn't happen too often. San Diego State feels like they should have gotten a Pac-12 invite. They do now have one, but Cal was one of the programs that didn't want San Diego State to get in there. And so now the Aztecs get a chance to play the Golden Bears in a game that I think could be a ton of fun, especially with San Diego State looking to build and the Cal Golden Bears thinking they could have a pretty big year this next season. And then finally, another in-state matchup, Mississippi State at Southern Miss. Both teams not very good and not projected to be very good, but Charles Huff brings his guys into town. It's going to be his first year at Southern Miss. I think that they could give Mississippi State a run for their money. Mississippi State lost at home to Toledo last season. There's no saying that they couldn't lose this game to Southern Miss, which would be one that Southern Miss would not soon forget. So that takes us to our second to last tier, which is going to be the potential upset. Some of the other games, charged environments, there's some fun, but for the most part, the favorite is going to be favored by a significant margin. In these potential upsets, I'm looking at power conference teams that could totally get taken down, especially if they're not ready for the task at hand. You've got Duke at UConn in this tier. You've got a couple of teams there that won 9 games last season, which is pretty significant. And you consider the fact that UConn ended last season with a win over North Carolina. They could go 2 for 2 versus schools in the state of North Carolina that are in the power conference against Duke as well. So definitely a chance for UConn to derail Duke's season there. You've got Stanford at Hawaii. I always love when Hawaii is able to get a power conference team to come play in their stadium. And so the Rainbow Warriors will have an opportunity to try and take out Stanford, a Stanford team that people aren't super high on right now. And Hawaii was actually close to beating a year or two ago. You've got Houston at Rice, which is just a fun rivalry and one of those ones between a program that's a power conference program, still giving the guys in the group of 5 a chance to play them each year. And Rice actually took them out a couple of seasons ago when they last played in Rice's stadium. So it's going to be a packed stadium at Rice, and I really think it's going to be an awesome game because that one usually is. And then we've got Iowa State at Arkansas State. The Red Wolves are a program and a team that's going to hope to contend in the Sun Belt this next season, and I think they could be a college football playoff sleeper as a result of that. And so it's just fun to see Iowa State go into their building. If they are a sleeper, we'll learn in that game, and they could get a pretty significant win over an Iowa State team that, of course, hopes to contend in the Big 12 with all their returning production they have back and all their playmakers that they're going to be bringing in. And so, at long last, we are to the top tier, which is the great matchups, and we've got a handful that I am just so jazzed for this next season. Duke at Tulane. It was like the script writers knew exactly what they were doing here, putting Duke with their new quarterback, Darian Mensah, who was developed and built at Tulane and had that last breakout season this last year as a freshman. Mensah has to return to Tulane in his first season at his new team and Duke, and that is just poetry in motion right there. It's going to be really intense to see him go on the road against his former team and to see that charged environment. Tulane getting to host 2 power conference teams this season. That's something you really like to see. BYU on the road versus East Carolina. The Cougars were a team that was right there in the playoff race, right there in the Big 12 title race this whole last season, and now they've got to go on the road early in the season against an East Carolina team that ended last season on a really hot win streak and ends up winning the bowl game over NC State. They also have a matchup against NC State in week 1, so some big non-conference games for East Carolina, and in this one, just an opportunity for them to notch a big win, and the Pirates are another one of those programs just like Tulane and just like Memphis, who we're about to talk about actually, that aspires to be a power conference team. So it's awesome to see them being a heavy hitter in the non-conference and bringing in these big-time opponents. Blake Harrell, this will be his first full season as the permanent head coach of East Carolina. He was an interim for the part of last season where they got on a nice winning streak. And I look at programs that elevate a guy like that who had success late in the year, it typically is pretty seamless for the next season. So we'll see how charged East Carolina is and how much of a fight they'll put up in that game. UCLA travels to play UNLV. This marks 2 straight seasons. Could even be more than that, but just the last season in memory I have is Syracuse going to play UNLV because I was at that game. Them now getting UCLA to come to their building is another really awesome matchup, and I could see UNLV giving UCLA a run for their money here. I mean, the Bruins aren't going to be world beaters in their own right, but they're hoping to have another solid season where they can stack some wins here. They got in a nice streak at the end of last season, and UNLV was in the top 25 last season. They bring in, obviously, the new head coach, and Dan Mullen could be a chance for a signature win against a power conference opponent. It's a really awesome game for them. And then finally, Arkansas at Memphis. Last season, Memphis hosts Florida State and takes out the Noles. Obviously, the Noles were not a very good team, but now an opportunity to make it back-to-back years with a really awesome win like that. This time they play Arkansas, and the Razorbacks are heading to a really big season under Sam Pittman for a guy that perpetually feels like he's on the hot seat every single season. So I'm super, super pumped for these games, and I think they're all going to be pretty awesome and ones that not just the casual viewer who appreciates something like this, or I should say the intense viewer that appreciates something like this would like, but also the casual viewer that's more honed into the national stuff. He'll realize like, oh, wow, Arkansas is going on the road to play Memphis. That's kind of interesting. Let me tune into that. These are the types of games that I feel like could reach that level. So there you have it. That is the full tier list rating every group of 5 game where they host a Power 4 team. I am super pumped to see these ones go down. It's one of my favorite genres of college football games for next season. Let me know down in the comments, which of these games did you know are going down? Which of these games did you learn about from this video? And if so, which of these games are you most excited for next season? Let me know all that stuff down in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, if you want to see more like this, we got plenty of more great content coming for you guys, and I will talk to you guys later this week.